Hi, I'm Hank Haney, and I'm here to help you with your full swing. I want to give you a step-by-step approach to help you develop a better swing and play better golf. There's no doubt that swinging the golf club is one of the most difficult things that any of us try and do athletically. But if you have a plan and you have a good diagnosis as to what your mistakes are, you can definitely make some improvements. So I'm going to help you with that. The first thing you always start off with in terms of a player's plan is I try to look at just, the basic fundamentals that that player has: their grip, their stance, their posture, their takeaway, their backswing, what their impact looks like, their follow through, the whole basic swing. But it all evolves around trying to get a correct ball flight. And every player who plays the game of golf, it doesn't matter whether they're, the best player in the world, Tiger Woods, or somebody who's just beginning, they have a certain pattern to their shots. They'll either have a tendency to slice the ball to the right, or they'll have a tendency to hook the golf ball to the left. 90% of the people that play golf tend to slice the ball to the right. But better players always will have a tendency to fight a hook, the shot that curves too much to the left. So if there's a road you take to playing good golf, what I always try to do is get my students to go from slicing to hooking to good golf, or from hooking to good golf. And that's the road that you'll take to becoming a better player. Now, you analyze your game and okay, with a driver, and the driver is the club you want to look at the most in terms of your curvature. And the reason for that is the driver is the straightest face club in your bag. With an iron club, you're hitting more underneath the ball. So when you hit underneath the ball, you put backspin counteracts side spin. The ball won't curve as much with a 7-iron as it will with, say, a 5-iron. Your driver has anywhere between 9 and 11 degrees of loft, and it will be the club that curves the most. So kind of analyze your ball flight based on the way that you hit your driver, whether you curve it to the right or curve it to the left. And you're going to keep that in mind as I go through all the fundamentals, because slight adjustments that you might make will have to do with the way that you currently curve the golf ball. But when you look at the fundamentals in golf, obviously the most important thing is your grip, and you hear that over and over again. It's the first chapter in most any golf book, and the grip is your primary control of the club face, and the club face controls which way your golf ball is going to curve. If I hit a shot and I curve the ball to the right, then what that's telling me is that my club face was open when I hit the golf ball. If I hit a shot that curves too much to the left, what that tells me is that my club face was closed when I hit the golf ball. So the club face is your primary control over the curvature of the shot, and that is really going to determine how accurate you are to the greatest extent. So the grip, because of all that, the grip is the most important fundamental in golf. It's your primary control over the club face. It's your only contact with the golf club. So when you grip it, you want to take your time and do it right every single time. When you see the pros taking their grip, they'll do it meticulously, just one hand at a time, really taking their time. First the left hand, then the right hand. Amateurs often just kind of put their hands on the club and then maybe make a little adjustment after that. So when you're taking your grip, make sure you take your time first and foremost. When you take the grip with the left hand, I like to see the club going a little bit more across the palm of your left hand. A lot of players today are gripping the club in their fingertips. And the reason I don't like that is when the club's in your fingers, it tends to give you more of a flippy release. Now this may help you if you're slicing the golf ball, but if you're having a tendency to hook the golf ball, it's going to cause it to be even worse. And you're going to also have a tendency to hit the outside part of the ball with that club face closing. You're going to hit a lot of pulls along with those hooks, and that's double trouble. So when you hold on to the club, I want the club more across the palm of your hand, right kind of through the pad of your left hand and to the index finger of your right hand, right to your first knuckle. Lay that club right across that palm like that, and then close it on there. Now the reason for this, it gives you more stability with the club face. If I grip the club and I hold it in my fingers, and I kind of milk the club. Can you see how that club face is turning all over the place? But if I put it more a little more toward the palm of my hand and then change my grip pressure, the club face is barely moving, if at all. Okay? So it's going to be a lot easier for you to get the club face to stay stable and square if you have this grip with your left hand. And also, when you come into the ball, ideally, the back of your left hand is facing the target at impact. And the back of your hand, for all intensive purposes, is your club face. If I hit with the side of my hand, I'm going to slice. If I hit with the side of my hand this way, I'm going to hook. If I hit with the back of my hand, the ball is going to go straight, providing you have a neutral grip. Now, what I mean by a neutral grip is that when I grip the club, the V that's formed by my thumb and forefinger should point kind of right up toward, in between my right shoulder and my right ear. Okay? Now this is the grip that will allow that club face to be square. When my left hand is facing the target, so will the club face be facing the target. If I put my hand too much underneath here, where I turn my left hand back toward my right shoulder, this is considered a strong grip. Now when I square my left hand, the club face is too closed. Ideally, I want that face to be square when the left hand's facing the target. If I have too weak of a grip, where my left hand is turned too much over here, now when I try to square it up, I can't physically turn my hand anymore and the club face is still too open. So the first thing that you should always check whenever you're in a situation where you've got curvature on your golf ball is your grip. If you hook the golf ball, you've probably got your hands turned too much to the right on the club. If you slice the golf ball, you may have your hands turned too much to the left on the club. But at any rate, when you grip it in a neutral position with your left hand, the back of the left hand should face the target and have the club face square at the same time. Now the right hand fits on there so that both of your palms should always face one another, never opposing one another. A lot of players I see have their right hand too much on top like this, and their right hand palm is facing down, the left hand palm is facing out, they're opposing one another. Ideally, both the palms are facing one another when you grip it. My thumb and forefinger are pinched together, and I trigger both my fingers here of the forefinger of my left hand, the forefinger of my right hand kind of makes a little trigger, and that right hand fits right in that crease right there, right on that thumb. That's a neutral grip, and one that will allow you to square the club face the most times at impact. Now, if you slice the ball to the right, you might want to turn your grip just a little bit to the right, give yourself a little bit of help. If you hook the ball too much to the left, you may want to turn your grip a little bit weaker. It might help you with that hook you've got going. But in general, I like to see most players just with a pretty darn neutral grip. Now the next thing I want to talk about is your grip pressure, because you hear a lot about players talking about holding onto the grip with a real soft pressure. And it all depends on what your ball flight mistake is. If you have a tendency to hook the golf ball, you'd be better off holding on a little tighter. When you hold on tighter to the grip, what happens is it slows down the closing of that club face. If you hold on real soft with your hands, you're going to get more whippiness in there, you're going to get more hand action, and that's going to promote more of a hook. So if you slice the ball right, hold on softer. If you hook the ball to the left, hold on a little tighter. But that's the grip that you want to give you the best chance to square the club face consistently at impact. Now the next thing that you look at in the true fundamentals are, your stance and your posture. Now when you set up to the golf ball, you want to look at a couple things. First thing is you ideally want your feet, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, your arms. You want everything parallel left of your target. Okay, that's the first thing. You don't want to be set up where you're setting like this, and now I can see my left arm, and my arms are obviously pointed to the right, or my shoulders are pointed to the right, or my shoulders are pointed to the left. I want my feet, knees, hips, and shoulders, arms, and my eyes all parallel to the left of my target at address. I've got a little bit of bend forward from my hips, and I'm in what we would call an athletic position. A lot of players, when I see them setting up, they're sitting too far back on their heels. And usually these are players that take the club inside and come over the top. And see, when you come over the top, you have a tendency to fall towards your toes. Their immediate instinct reaction is to sit back too much on their heels. So then they sit back on their heels, and then that causes them to take it even more inside and come even more over the top. So when you set up to it, try to get in an athletic position. The weight should be kind of toward the balls of your feet, and you're in a position just like you're going to field a ground ball or shoot a free throw. Just like in other sports, you're in that athletic position where now you can really be lively with your legs and you can move properly. I've got a little bit of bend from my knees. I got a little bit of bend from my hips. And when I bend forward from my hips, now my arms have the freedom just to hang down underneath my shoulders. My back is relatively straight, and I'm set up in a posture that will allow me to turn my body and keep my axis. I define my axis well at address, and I turn and I rotate on that axis during the backswing. It's so important that you not only get your alignment, but get a pretty good posture here at address so that you can turn properly and achieve a correct coil. Now when you're looking from this view, what you're looking at is that when you set up to the golf ball, the ball position is going to vary a little bit with each club because all your clubs are different. I've got a driver here, I've got a 7-iron here. If I had a sand wedge, you can see that the ball is going to move just a little bit with each club in my bag based on the fact that the clubs are all made differently. And what I mean by that is with the driver, the shaft goes straight down into the head and the face progresses in front of the shaft. So when you set that club down, my hands are going to be a little bit behind the ball at address. With a 7-iron, I've got my hands a little farther forward because now the handle is in front of the club head. That's the way it was made. And the sand wedge is even more that way. But if you look at it, the ball position does not move much in your stance at all. It just moves a little bit from the left heel back to the center by the time you get to the sand wedge. All the woods are going to be kind of forward off the left heel. Irons just start gradually moving back just a little bit. That's the ball position. Now when you look at how your arms should set up and your shoulders from the side here, when you set up to the golf ball, set up so that this triangle that's formed by your hands, arms, and shoulders sit down right in front of your body like this. You don't want to have your hands pressed forward here. You're not trying to make this a straight line. You don't want to have your hands back here because obviously that's not how the club was made. It's not sitting on the ground properly. Put the club flat on the ground just like it was made. Put your arms in front of your body, and that's the proper address position with your arms and your shoulders. Your right shoulder is just slightly lower than your left shoulder. How much should it be lower? It should be a little bit lower just because your right hand is lower on the club than your left hand. So because my right hand is lower, my left shoulder is just a little bit lower. But my right hand's only a few inches lower. So you don't want to set up like this where you got this left shoulder way up here and the right shoulder way down here. Just a slight address position where your right shoulder is just slightly beneath your left shoulder. Just the same amount that your right hand's lower on the grip than your left hand if you're a right-handed player. Okay? This triangle that's formed, like I said, sits right in front of your body. Now at impact, your weight is going to shift forward. At address, you're just, 50-50. Maybe a little more on your left side with a short iron, maybe a touch back more on your right side with a driver. That's because the driver's teed up. You're going to sweep it off the tee. An iron, you're going to hit down just a little bit. But just about 50-50 with your weight distribution. Your stance is just about shoulder width with a medium iron. Gets a little wider, obviously, with the driver, a little narrower with the short iron. But this triangle is important. If I push my hands too far forward, I'm going to take that club too much to the inside in the backswing. If I have my hands too far back, I'm going to take the club too much to the outside in the backswing. I want to get my arms right in front of my body. At impact, my weight's going to be more like 90% on my left side. And now all of a sudden, this left arm, club face, club shaft, all form one line. And that's the line that a lot of people are trying to get at address. But it doesn't work that way because if you put your hands forward at address, you're going to take that club straight back to the inside in the backswing. So hands in front of your body, correct posture, bending forward, slight knee flex. When you set up to it, square with your stance. You can go a little closed, right foot back just a little bit with the driver if you're trying to hit a little bit of a draw. You can go a little more open with your short irons because it helps you to clear through the golf ball better, which helps move the bottom of the swing forward, and that's important for a short iron. But in general, you're going to set up pretty square. In terms of how your feet should point, your right foot's toed out just a little bit, your left foot's toed out just a little bit. Now that's a general rule. Now if you're playing a short iron, you might want to square the right foot a little more, toe the left foot out just a little more. If you're playing a driver, you might want to toe the right foot out just a little more, not quite so far out with the left foot. That gives you more turn going back here and makes it easier for you to hit from inside, easier to hit a driver. But in general, your feet are toed out just a little bit, makes it easier for you to turn in both directions. All right, now as far as the takeaway is concerned, when you're looking at the takeaway, there's a certain sequence that has to happen here. And the idea is that in the backswing, your lower body resists and your upper body turns. So my lower body resists, my upper body turns as I go back. Okay, what a lot of people tend to do is they move their lower body too much and everything gets out of sequence, because ideally in the downswing, you're going to start with your lower body. Well, you resist with the lower body in the backswing, you turn the upper body, and you always turn on your axis. Whatever bend I started with, I turn on, which means if I'm making a mistake, I'm either tilting too much this way or I'm leveling out too much that way. I want to turn right on my axis as I go back and as I come through. I want to keep myself fairly centered when I'm looking from the side. So when I look from this direction, I'm going to keep myself centered. I don't want to be reverse pivoting like this, and I don't want to be leaning back like that. One thing that I'll look at from the side, make sure when you turn, you keep your eyes level to the ground. What a lot of people tend to do is they tend to tilt their head like this. It reverses in the downswing, and now they're hanging too far back behind the ball. So eyes level when you turn. Lower body resists, upper body turns. When you take the golf club back, there's a few different things that are happening in terms of the golf club and the plane that it's swinging on and how it's getting there. Number one, your wrists when they hinge this way in the golf swing. They cock up and they release back down as you swing. So you've got wrist cock that goes up and down. Your left shoulder turns back. It goes under a little because of the tilt with your shoulders. My left shoulder turns back and under. My wrists hinge up. My arms swing back and up, and there's some rotation with my forearm. This rotation is what gets the golf club on the correct plane. That plane's a little different for each person, but everybody has one, and you want to swing on your correct plane. It's dictated by the angle of the club shaft at address. So when you set the golf club down, this becomes the angle of your swing plane. Now, there's more than one plane in the backswing, because if you swung on one plane, you'd swing right back on the angle of this shaft, and that golf club would be right back here. It'd be very, very low in the backswing. It'd be difficult for you to make solid ball turf contact consistently with the club being that low. It would tend to make you too shallow coming into the golf ball. So when you set up to it, you have this angle of the club shaft, your wrists are hinging, and you're taking the club back right along the angle of the shaft. It should pass through a point that's parallel to the ground and parallel to the target line. Now when that golf club is parallel to the ground and parallel to the target line, the club face is going to be turned in just slightly. And the reason that club face is turned in slightly is because you're bent forward from your hips. If you were standing like this and standing straight up, the club would look like that. It'd be toe up, straight up and down. You might want a little more straight up and down when you're hitting a pitch shot, but when you're hitting a normal shot, you want it turned in just a little. That's square to the arc of your swing. And that is on the correct plane if you're parallel to the ground and parallel to the target line. This golf club's parallel to the ground, but it's not parallel to the target line. This golf club's parallel to the ground, but it's not parallel to the target line. One's too upright, the other one's too flat, and they're both off of the plane. The correct plane, parallel to the ground, parallel to the target line. Now, as I continue back, my club progresses above but parallel to the original angle of the shaft. The original angle of the shaft here, once again, is a plane that you'd like to swing on. That's the plane angle, if you will. So when I swing back, there's the correct plane in the takeaway. Now I shift up and I've got multiple planes. It's a congruent angle, if you will, where you've got one plane angle, but you have many different points of origin with this plane in the backswing. So to my way of thinking, there's multiple planes in the backswing, but they're all parallel to one another. And as you continue to go up in the backswing, that club is always parallel to the original angle of the shaft. If I am short of parallel, the club would point to the left at the top. If I get all the way back, the club would be parallel to the ground and parallel to the target line. If I swing the golf club back like this golf club is across the line. If I swing the golf club back like this golf club is laid off. Ideally, I want the golf club on the correct plane going back. Now, a lot of people think that the length of your swing has something to do with the plane of your swing, and it really doesn't. Because if I take a golf club that's too far across the line here, and I shorten my swing, I really have a shorter swing that's still too upright and too much across the line. So concentrate on making sure that when you swing the golf club back, you get that golf club on the correct plane. It can't be too laid off, it can't be too across the line. You don't want it too flat, you don't want it too upright, you want it right on the correct plane. And it either is or it isn't. Upright swings will tend to hit into the ground, they will tend to block the face open, and they'll tend to hit off the toe. Flat swings will tend to hit thin shots, they'll hit off the heel, and you'll have a tendency to hook the ball too much. So that's kind of a little ball flight clue and impact clue that you can look at to kind of tell yourself where is your correct plane. Now the club face is part of that swing plane. When you swing the golf club back, ideally the club face should be on the same plane as your left arm, left wrist, club face, all the same at the top. If your club face is looking like this, it's too open at the top. And that means you're going to really have to work with your hands to get it back to square. If I get the golf club back like this golf club is too closed at the top. The face is kind of facing skyward. I'm going to have to block that face open, or I'm going to hit some big hook. So in the backswing, lower body resists, upper body turns, club comes up, keep it on the correct plane as you go back, keep your eyes level as you turn. That's a very important part of the backswing. Your eyes need to stay level. As soon as your eyes start tilting, it's going to alter the plane of your swing. Keep your eyes level, rotate around your axis, shaft on the plane, club face on the plane also. Once you get to the top of the swing correctly, it's going to be easier for you to start the downswing. You know, most people ask me, Hank, how do you start the downswing? And they ask that question as if they've made a perfect backswing. But the reality is that if you don't swing the golf club back properly and coil properly and have the golf club on the correct plane, you're not going to be able to start your downswing correctly. So ideally what would happen is, and I already kind of explained it to you, your lower body resists, your upper body turns, you're creating a coil, and that coil is such that you couldn't hold it up there for very long. You're really tense and you're coiled, and what's going to happen now is the lower body's supposed to get going. The downswing should start from the ground up, your feet, your knees, your hips, and then your shoulders, your arms, and then your hands at the bottom. They release. But most people do it just the opposite. They start down with their upper body. Their shoulders come out over the top. That's caused from typically taking the golf club back too much to the inside. You take it in, it's too flat, now you've got to reroute it to get it back on the plane. So on the plane going back, lower body starts down, arms lower down, back into the same place that they came from, and then you release at the bottom. That release at the bottom is as important as anything else. I mean, regardless of how you swing, you have to get the correct release at the bottom. Now, most amateurs, what they do is they tend to hit on the collapse. So the left hand is collapsing. That's adding loft to the club. It's making the swing too shallow, so they're kind of hitting up on it. And they're going to have a tendency to hit weak shots. They're also going to have a tendency to miss to the right. So ideally, when you hit, the back of your left hand squares up and it turns. And that gives you a point of extension not long into your follow through. I see a lot of players today that are hitting where they're hitting kind of on the collapse like this. And that's a good way to fix somebody who's a habitual slicer. But the problem is once you start hitting like this, you're going to have a tendency to always hit the outside part of the ball. And when you hit the outside part of the ball, you're going to have a tendency to a lot of shots that pull to the left. Ideally, I want to hit the inside part of the ball. And the way you do that, you have the club on the plane, you have the club face on the plane, and you release properly like this. Now I'm getting the inside portion of the ball, so I can get the golf ball to start off straight or just slightly to the right and draw back to the left. But the release is so important. The back of your left hand, you want to delay that release until impact. You delay it and then you release at the bottom. Most people release from the top. They throw the club too much in an effort to try and square the club face or in an effort to try and get the club to approach the ball from behind, because if they have the club coming down too steep, they're going to hold on to that release. They're just going to bury it right in the ground. If you get the golf club on the correct plane and you get your lower body start to move, you're going to find it easier to delay the hit. And that hit should happen right there at the bottom. I mean, you want to release that club right at the bottom and feel that release with the back of the left hand facing the target. If the left hand faces the target at impact, that ball's got to go to the target. Now, when you look at the finish that you see players make, a lot of it, you'd think, well, the ball's already gone. But a lot of times what you can do is you can change somebody's swing by changing their finish. And what I mean by that is that when I see a player, for instance, that finishes through like this, and they've got their upper body really twisted through a lot, that's typically some player that's going to leave the club face behind a little bit. The upper body's so active that it's hard for the club to get there in time. And I might suggest them that they stay back a little more with the upper body and allow the lower body to lead and let the club go. Especially if you have a tendency to miss shots to the right, you're going to see that upper body turning through too quick. Conversely, if you see a player that kind of hangs back like this, that's typical of somebody who hooks the golf ball. So if I hang back, let my hands go, that club face is going to turn over too much, and I'm going to get a lot of hook from right to left. So what I want to do is I want to get everything moving through together. My hips, my club, my arms, everything together. That gives you the correct timing of the golf swing. And ideally, when you finish through, you really don't need to finish through much past right there. You want to allow your eyes to come up and follow the shot. I see so many times amateur golfers standing like that, and they think that's the correct finish. They're trying to keep their head down. You want to let your eyes look at the ball, but once you've hit it, go ahead and let your eyes come up and follow where that golf ball is going. Eyes up as you come through, watching the ball. That's going to allow your body to turn through properly. So it starts with having a good diagnosis, what your fundamentals currently are, but most important, what your ball flight mistakes are, and then you build from there. Grip, stance, posture, your alignment. You get a good backswing with your shoulders turning on their axis, your lower body resistant. Most important to me, swinging the golf club on the correct plane. Once you get the golf club back correctly, it's going to be easier to start it down. Once you get the club back, it's more the lower body that starts down, the upper body stays back, the club lowers, and then you release at the bottom. And when you feel that release well timed at the bottom, you're going to have a powerful and repeating golf swing that's going to lead you into a balanced and full finish. One where you're facing the target, not past the target, and where your eyes are looking up and follow the shot, and you're going to hit a lot better golf shots. Whether you're analyzing your game or trying to take your game to the next level or to the greatest level you can be at, there are 9 shots that you want to be able to play, or at least 9 shots that you should be aware of. Now, if you can't play some of those shots, it's going to tell you something about your golf swing. And here are the 9 shots. Let's just imagine you've got 3 trajectories. You've got a ball that flies, low, medium, and high. And you've got 3 different shots you can hit from there. So I could start the ball left and fade it back to the target, low, medium, and high. I could start the ball right and draw it back to the target, low, medium, and high. And then obviously your straight ball, low, medium, and high. Now, the greatest ball strikers in the history of the game can play all those 9 shots whenever they want them. Now, why would you want all those shots? Well, if the pin is back left, the great ball strikers will try and draw it into the pin. If the pin is back right, the great ball strikers will try to fade it into that pin. If it's into the wind, obviously you're going to want to flight the ball down a little bit. If you've got to stop the ball quickly, you want to put the ball up in the air more. So to have those shots at your disposal is going to give you the best opportunity to be the best golfer you could possibly be. But it also helps you in analyzing your game. I mean, when you're standing out on the driving range, if you find that it's easier to hook the ball than it is to fade the ball, that tells you something about your golf swing. Well, what does it tell you? it tells you that your club is probably coming too much from the inside. If you can hit, you know, the 3 hooks, those 3 shots, but you can't hit the fades, then chances are really good that your golf club is coming too far from inside. That causes your club to swing on too much of an arc, and you're going to tend to hook the ball. When you see people that have that particular mistake, what you're going to typically see is somebody who's across the line at the top of their swing. When the club's across the line at the top, it's going to tend to drop back inside. Their hands are going to flip the club over. So anytime you see that club across the line, it's going to drop inside, hands are going to flip, and that person can hit the hook, but they can't hit the fade. So watch that you make sure you get that golf club on the correct plane going back, and feel like that club's pointed a little more left at the top. If that golf club gets across the line, you're going to have a tendency to hook. Anytime you see somebody cross the line at the top, you're probably going to see some hook with it. The other thing that you'll tend to see with people who hook the golf ball is they hang back with their body. So when they finish, it'll look like this. My body stops, my hands keep going, the ball's going to have a tendency to hook too much. Now that player might be able to play the 3 shots that are played with a hook, but they're going to have difficulty playing the straight balls and a lot of trouble playing the fades. Now conversely, the more I get the golf club over here at the top, which is to the left, the more the club comes down in front of me, and the more I'm going to find it easier to fade the ball. So if I get the golf club pointed more to the left over here, then you can see how much more I finish through. You can see how my club swings off to the left a little more, and this fade shot becomes a lot easier. I'm going to vary the trajectory of this shot by the way that I finish. To play the low shot, I'm going to hold the finish short, feel the back of the left hand leading in and de-lofting the golf club. The shorter your swing, the slower the swing, the shorter your finish, the more you're going to flight the ball down. If I was playing in a big strong wind, I might finish real short. It's going to really flight the ball down into the wind. If I wanted to play a low shot that was hooking, I would put the ball about 1 ball's width back in my stance, hold off the finish, and hit that low one. Little low draw from right to left. If I'm going to hit a low fade, same idea, but I'm going to angle the plane more left. Ball's a little farther forward in my stance. Make sure the club's point a little more left at the top. Finish through to the left more when I come through. A lower, shorter finish, going to be a lower ball flight. If I want to elevate that ball up in the air, I need more speed, I need a bigger finish, bigger swing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to feel like I got a little more turn going back. I'm going to feel a little more release with my hands and a fuller finish. That full finish is going to send the ball up in the air. That was a little straight ball. If I want to fade it, I'll put my finish angle a little more to the left. Ball's a little more forward. Big swing again. And now it's fading. If I want to hit a high draw, ball back in the stance a little more. Club coming more from the inside. Big swing. Big finish. Higher shot. Those 9 shots are the key to you learning to be the best ball striker you can be. But also they're the key to analyzing your game. So figure out which shots you can play and which shots you can't play. If you're someone who hooks the ball, you've probably got the club too much across the line. If you're someone who fades the ball well, but you can't draw the ball, you've probably got the club too laid off at the top. If you're someone who hits it real high and can't hit it low, you're probably hitting too much on the scoop here. You got to learn to hit with the back of left hand there. If you're someone who hits it low and can't get the ball up in the air, You've probably got that golf club coming in like this, where the right hand's turned down and there's no loft on the club. Try to get that club more out in front of you and more open so you can flight the ball up in the air. Work on those 9 shots. You're going to improve your ball striking. You know, in golf, there's 2 factors. You have distance and direction, and the part really that determines a player's real potential, to me, is distance. It's such an important part of golf. That's why you see, you know, the top players in the game today that dominate the game, they're all long hitters. They can hit that golf ball a long way. And even the shortest hitter on the PGA Tour is quite a bit longer than the average player, and even longer than the scratch player. So distance is so important. It's the biggest question that I get. People come to me and say, Hank, you know, how can I get more distance? Well, here's what you need to concentrate on to get more distance. The first thing is that speed gives you distance. So if you look at everything that would produce more speed, the first thing that I would look at is trying to get yourself to swing the golf club faster. When I make a swing here, I'm making a swishing sound. You can hear that club swishing. Well, you know, in simplest terms, the louder the swish, the faster your swing and the more speed you're going to have. Most people are under this illusion that for some reason they swing too fast. But the reality is the average golfer swings the club at about 85 miles an hour, and the slowest swing on the PGA Tour would be about 105 miles an hour. So most people need to get that club swinging faster. There's a difference between swinging too hard, which is all with your upper body and muscle in it, as opposed to swinging fast. When you swing fast, you do that by relaxing your arms and feeling like you got a soft grip. You feel your hands and arms as relaxed as they can, and you feel the whip of the club as you come through the ball. If you've got more speed, you're going to have more distance. When I'm going for a long hit, I'm trying to relax as much as I can and really feel the tension out of my body and feel that club really whipping through the shot right at the bottom. The faster you swing, the more speed you're going to have. Now that sounds like an obvious statement, but too many amateurs are trying to slow their swing down. I always tell people, you take a fast, lousy swing, you slow it down, you've got a slow, lousy swing. So go ahead and speed it up. Get that club head speed going. Now how can you get a faster swing? You make a bigger arc. The manufacturers have helped you out with that because the drivers today are like 45 inches long. That's one of the reasons that people have gained more distance. The old drivers used to be like 43 inches long, then they grew to 44, now they're 45, 45 and a half. You get a bigger arc, you get more speed. But you can lengthen your arc out also by turning more. So the bigger the turn, the more arc you're going to have, the more speed you can create. It would help you with a driver to turn your right foot out a little bit. That allows your hips to turn just a little bit, gives you a bigger arc there. You also get a bigger arc because you hinge your wrists. If you go back and you don't cock your wrists, your swing's going to be a lot shorter than if you do cock your wrists. So more wrist cock, a bigger turn, more speed at the bottom, less tension in your body. All those things are going to give you more club head speed. Now besides the club head speed, you've got to get your speed applied correctly into the back of the ball. A lot of players have a tendency to come into the ball on too steep of an angle. They're coming down too sharp into the golf ball, and they're wasting their speed into the ground instead of applying it into the back of the ball. So what you want to make sure is that when you turn back so that your body is behind the ball. Your upper body is behind the ball, so now you can deliver the club in from behind the ball. If I tilt my shoulders and tilt my eyes and reverse pivot here, I'm coming right down at the ball unless I fall back. Ideally, I'm going to turn back so I can deliver that club into the back of the golf ball. So now my power is delivered into the back of the ball. I've got more speed, lengthened out my arc, tried to swing the club faster. The next thing is taking the spin off the golf ball. Now ideally when you hit the ball, the longest hit is going to have about 2,000 to 2,200 RPMs of spin. That doesn't mean much to you, except when you slice the golf ball, it's probably going at 4,000 RPMs of spin. And what happens is the ball doesn't fly through the air as well, and it doesn't roll at all when it hits the ground. Slices spin away from you and spin way too much, and that's why they don't go anywhere. So ideally, you're going to get a ball that's going to kind of fly like this. It's going to have a little bit of a hump to it. And that's a ball that's going to roll farther when it hits the ground. That's why all the clubs today, all the new drivers are designed to take spin off, to launch the ball higher and take spin off. And if you have a good driver, it's going to help you in that area. But what you want to do is you want to also make sure that you're not hitting with your hands in this position, which adds loft, or in this position, which opens the club face. And that relates back to getting the plane of your swing right and getting your release right, the back of the left hand square. And whenever somebody's spinning the ball too much and they're losing distance, I work on trying to get them to get the back of the left hand to do this more. Turn the back of the left hand, that reduces the spin on the shot, and it's going to give you a more penetrating ball flight with less spin, more distance, and especially more roll. If you can get the spin down, get the speed up, get the speed applied into the back of the ball, you're going to be hitting it longer before you know it. Now, I've never seen any player that couldn't get a lot more distance if they applied these principles. All right, now with this disc, if you apply the principles that I talked about and the fundamentals, you formulate a plan, you're on your way to playing better golf. You're going to be shooting lower scores and enjoying the game a lot more. Good luck.